Anyways, Don and I, during COVID times, we did, Don's gonna make a quick announcement.
Stick around after the show for some refreshments. And the main one being some lemonade with huckleberry vodka, which is, that vodka is from the Tetons. It's from mountain huckleberries, and it's made in the Tetons, which are found in the Tetons. So, it's a vodka.
So anyways, Don and I, like the rest of us, of course, were holed up at home because of COVID. Not really sure it would be okay to go anywhere, and just how safe it would all be. And as bad as COVID was in our own country, over 1 million people, of course, succumbed to COVID, there were also some really, really good things as a result of the nation being shut down. One of them, Richard Attenborough, he does documentaries, typically on animals. He talks about just how a lot of the animal species actually made a big comeback during COVID because they didn't have to compete with us anymore. And also in the oceans as well. The sea life really rebounded as well because the amount of traffic, container ships really was drastically reduced as a result of COVID. Now to bring it a little bit more personal for Don and myself, we were in Alpine like the rest of us. Initially, when COVID came around, we weren't even sure if it was okay for us to go hiking up Hancock Hill. We just didn't know, right? And everybody, of course, was masked up, and most of us got our vaccines and such. But during that time, life goes on as much as it can possibly can. Honestly, it was pretty altered. Now, for us, at the time, Don and I are always big on having dog companions, and our last dog was Hudson. And during this time, Hudson got sick, unfortunately, and we wound up losing Hudson. And after that happened, we just did not want to stick around in Alpine for a while. We wanted to go, and get out of the area. And so initially, Donna got some correspondence from some of the national parks talking about how nobody was booking their lodges. And these lodges are so difficult to get rooms in. Sometimes you could try a year out ahead of time, and you're lucky if you could even find a room. And for us, it just made it to be a bit of a no-brainer. We needed to get out of town, and also to get to travel in some of the national parks that have millions of visitors in a year and have that cut back quite a bit just seemed like a wonderful opportunity for us to kind of do some traveling. So initially, this is actually 2 separate trips during COVID. The first one took place it was 2020, correct, time? In November?
It was the week of the 2020 presidential election.
Yeah, that's right. It was during the presidential election. And Donna and I decided, we have this opportunity to go to the South Rim. I've never been to the South Rim. I've just been to the North Rim of the Grand Canyon. Donna had been there before, but we like to try to do something that one or the other of us hasn't been able to do. So to kind of make it more of a safe trip for us to where we were comfortable going, because things had changed. The restaurant, for instance, this is our first accommodation at the South Rim of the Grand Canyon. It's the Alto Bar. It's a hotel a grand hotel that basically opened in 1905. The man responsible for having this built was involved with the railroads, and they wanted to build this hotel to draw tourists to the Grand Canyon, and frankly, it was the high-class clientele that would stay there, that could afford to stay there. And luckily for us, it wasn't so bad for one night, so we took off. But initially what we did when we left Alpine, we drove straight to Albuquerque, got to stay with some friends to kind of break up the road trip. And after a few nights there, then we made our way, hit it down, 2, so. So anyways, we started on Interstate 40 West, which happens to be just right next to the old Route 66, Route 66. And then from there, go ahead, hon, what the next song, and then we'll get into it. Go ahead, please.
It just kind of started with its own.
And of course, when you're on I-40, you're going to go through Winslow, Arizona. And I mean, as growing up, I was a big Eagles fan, never dreaming I'd ever make it through Winslow, Arizona. I finally had my opportunity. And you're going to ask, like, why here? Why would they talk about Winslow, Arizona? But from there, then, of course, we went towards Flagstaff, and then from Flagstaff, then we entered up into the south rim of the Grand Canyon. And as I mentioned, we got to stay there for one night. The building itself was made out of local limestone and Oregon timber, and or actually Oregon pine. And after our first night there, then we transferred over to the Thunderbird, which is a little bit more austere place. Now, when we were there, though, the restaurant was not even open. So we had to bring our own food. In fact, Donna kind of brought things that we could make our meals in when we were there, since everything was shut down. And the only thing that they would let you do is the restaurant, the first night we got there, we got to order a salad, and that we would have to take away. We couldn't eat in the dining area. And then the next morning, there was a line. Everybody's like 6 to 8 feet apart waiting to get their cup of coffee, to start their day. So anyways, let me show the interior of this hotel. It really is a wonderful hotel. Basically, the idea when they did the hotel is have very much designed based on European influences, because that's what the clientele really wanted to go to at the time. But one of the wonderful things about being here was our proximity to the Grand Canyon itself. And I mean, here are some of the wonderful vistas that we all had the opportunity to see in the Grand Canyon. We're in the South Rim, looking at the North Rim here. The North Rim is about 1,000 foot higher than the South Rim, 8,000 feet the North Rim, 7,000 foot elevation at the South Rim. The temperature in early November was quite pleasant. The mornings were chilly, but it was quite comfortable to be there, and it wasn't too windy or anything like that either. So I'm just going to kind of go through some of the photos, because we all have seen these, and it was just every morning. Donna and I would get up, she'd get her cup of coffee, and we'd get to walk along the canyon, and we could literally go for half an hour without seeing anybody else. And this is a park that gets close to 6 million visitors in a year. Yeah, and just seeing. And by the way, the rocks of the canyon, I mean, we're talking 1.8 billion years old, some of the rocks there at the Grand Canyon, and as recent as 250 million years as well. Yeah, and see the bighorn sheep. Just more interesting outcroppings. And there, of course, is the Colorado River there. You can see in the bottom, there'll be a couple more close-ups. That's about 10 miles down if you take the trail down from the South Rim. It'd be about 10 miles before you got to the Colorado River. And then to get to the north if you wanted to go that far, we're talking anywhere from 15 to 18 miles. And then some of these, all throughout either morning or evening time is the time we got to hang out. That's pretty much in the easternmost part of the park. That road was closed. They only had one entrance coming and going into the south rim.
Is that a structure up there?
Yeah, that's the structure. And then, of course, that's the morning time when you see the sunlight on the right side of the different formations. Now, sometimes when you're there, you get to be a little lucky, like we were here. There's a little bit of a front coming in, kind of kicking up the leaves, a little bit of a rainbow. So I have a series of a few photographs looking over at the canyon there with those. And then, of course, you can see it's raining over in the north rim part of the Grand Canyon. Lovely sunset too, with all the atmospheric conditions going on. And now more morning shots. We wound up being there 4 different mornings. And again, I mean, hardly anybody ever that we had to compete with for anything, quite frankly. And we ate most of our meals in. More bighorn sheep.
Did you have to pack in all your food, or?
We packed in most of our food. I mean, we did have basically one meal out, and then the gift store was still open, but they limited the amount of people that could come and go, and they were selling things there as well. Yeah, and then they had some other restaurants that were close by. A lot of the campgrounds were still open, and a lot of the businesses within the park were still open, but just a lot less bodies there.
Was there a lot less, like when I was there was a lot of schwang or whatever, the clarity wasn't as.
This time, when we were there, the clarity was pretty decent then, actually. But that's not the case for all of our trip, because we, did encounter some areas that did have fires and stuff, and the smoke was.
How long was the trip?
I'm sorry?
How long were y'all gone on this particular trip?
So this particular segment, we were probably gone about a week. I mean, this one, initially we went to the Grand Canyon South Rim, and then we went back to Albuquerque, spent some more nights with our friends, went back to Alpine. So, and then we're just about to kind of start. The Bright Angel Trail was really the big trail. That's the one that is about 9 or so miles down to the Colorado River. And what was interesting, I mean, you can see pretty much the outline of the trail itself there. As we got to walk down into the canyon, I was able to take that photograph. It kind of just shows you just from, how much of a descent you're doing. It was interesting when we were going down, there were some people coming back up that had been camping down there. And, they had their backpacks on, and, it was a tough climb for them. I mean, they were suffering going up that incline.
Did you guys go all the way down?
We didn't go all the way down to the river, no. We went down they had this one rest area that had a toilet, and I went down a little bit further south of that, and then started to make my way back. There's Donna. You can see there's just one other person behind her on the trail. And yeah, the Grand Canyon is, as you all know, it's just phenomenal. They get to experience it. And, I loved my experience at the North Rim, but seeing the South Rim, the way that we got to take it in was just such a wonderful opportunity. Part of when Don and I went to the North Rim, it was wonderful to see, Zion and Bryce and go to Kanab, Utah, that we went to because they actually have a well-known animal sanctuary there, and we volunteered a few days to kind of help out there. And that was a totally different experience. I mean, here we are in November in the South Rim, And we went early October to the North Rim. And I mean, the night we got there, it started snowing. And the campgrounds that they had there, I mean, everybody was leaving the campgrounds because the wind was so bad. I mean, you couldn't secure your equipment. I mean, even if we had a trailer, it would have been constantly, moving along. And we're almost done here. Hermit's Rest is an area that, in the time of year that we were there, they actually close it off to automobile traffic. And what's wonderful about that is when you go to the main visitor center, they still had some of their vendors there. There were people renting bikes. So Donna and I were able to rent a bicycle, and they have a nice system of trails that's not right on the canyon. It's a little bit more to the south, so you ride your bike, but then you get to this, and then you're going out to a peninsula, so to speak, into the canyon. And it gives you just a great opportunity to kind of take things in and not having to compete with traffic and such. And that's the very end of Hermit's Peak. Now, there are a few times a year when it is opened up to traffic, and I think that's starting in December or January, February, but then the rest of the time it's shut down to traffic completely. And that just gives you more opportunity. You get more angles of the Grand Canyon. And by the way, I mean, we had hundreds and hundreds of photos, and this is pretty much the end of it here, because it could go on. So anyways, now the trip changes to the trip that Don and I recently did last year. And this, of course, is at the end of COVID. I work as a docent at Trinity. Trinity even reopened. But still things were, locked down. I mean, there are new variants of the virus, so people still weren't traveling. So this time we did basically the same trip going Alpine to Albuquerque, then we stopped in Prescott, Arizona. And Prescott is the reason why we stopped there. I have a niece that lives there with her husband. And it gave us an opportunity to kind of explore that area, which frankly I thought was very, very nice. It's a very nice community. They have a little city center with a town square. The restaurants were open there. I mean, now things are kind of getting back a little bit more to normal. Some people were still messed up, but for the most part, Prescott, was kind of back in the business. But this area right here is Watson Lake. Watson Lake is a little bit actually north of Prescott proper itself. And my niece and her husband, they live kind of between this area and the town of Prescott itself. But I thought these granite rock formations were pretty interesting. And, the lake is well utilized. In fact, that area up there, what people do on the 4th of July, they park up there because Prescott will do their firework display over Watson Lake coming up for the 4th of July.
So surely there must be a dam that...
I didn't see that there was a dam there at all. No. And it's higher elevation. Okay, now this is south of Prescott, where we kind of did our Prescott portion of the visit. And the reason why I kind of wanted to point this out is this is the memorial for the Hot Shots. And I don't know if most of us know the story that, of course, back in, let's see, what year was that? In 2011, in April, we had the Rock House fire out here. And it started in Marfa and it went to Fort Davis and it burned over 300,000 acres. The Hot Shots came here to help get control of that fire. Well, after that, they were back into their base, and it is outside of Prescott. And there was a fire, and it really nowhere close in comparison to the acreage that burned here in West Texas, but about 500 or so acres. They had this fire in the Yarnell Hill fire, and unfortunately, 19 of the Hot Shots, they perished in that fire. I mean, they hit temperatures of over 2,000 degrees. And when the fire came back on them, they didn't have the proper safety equipment. One was able to survive because he was a little further away. So 19 of the 20 hotshots, and I'm talking, young men, I mean, from the young 20s, there were a few in the 30s, and there was one gentleman in his 40s all perished as a result of that. So that's a memorial that the town of Prescott did that is south of their town. And they also have a statue there as well. So from there is, yes, go ahead.
How many years ago?
Oh, yeah, sorry, 10 years ago. Today is when they perished in the fire. So this is the 10th anniversary of them succumbing to that fire. So here, of course, now we're in California. And by the way, when I was in Arizona, I topped off my tank before. You go to California, you're paying $1.50 more just crossing the Colorado River than you did in Arizona. So I made sure to fill it up. And but most of the time, when you hit the Interstate 10, I'm going to go straight through to the LA area, then kind of back down to the coast, and then go to either San Diego County and or to see family and such. But this time I thought, it'd be kind of cool, to go see the Salton Sea, because I've never seen it. And actually, the Salton Sea is the largest lake in California, which I wasn't aware of that. I lived in California for 22 years. And it's, of course, salt water, but over time, unfortunately, the water is evaporating. So it's concentrating the saline, the salt in the lake itself, so much so that all the fish are dying off. And this area is on par with the Big Bend as far as the amount of birds that go to the area and nest there. And a lot of them, unfortunately, are dying off because as this is receding, the lake itself has become more toxic. In the 50s, this was a big area of recreation. I mean, people fished in it, they swam in it, they boated in it, and you're kind of crazy if you go swimming in it today. It's just that toxic. And as a matter of fact, as the water continues to recede, the powder, as a result of the lake bed, it's so fine, and the winds take it up, and they blow it. It blows it throughout the area. It's quite toxic. But this lake itself has had a series of ebb and flows over the years. At one time before, it was much lower, and then they started the Colorado River was a lot more expansive, and it was filling in the lake naturally. And then later, there are other ways that they were getting water into it. But because this is also a pretty productive agriculture area in the Imperial Valley, they have been pumping so much water from the Colorado River, this doesn't get it anymore. So they're trying to figure out a way of basically saving this, and it's frankly saving us, because if it continues the way it's going, it's going to be an ecological disaster in the making. So, but there is one species of fish that's still in the lake, the pupfish, and that's pretty much what the birds have been feeding on. And of course, because of the toxicity of the water, it's basically killing a lot of the birds as well. So of course, one of the things about this area, there is a lot of geologic activity on the east side of the lake, and they also create energy from that as well. And they found out that there's a lot of lithium there. Well, guess what? That's going to be great for automotive batteries going forward. So, they're always looking, for, right.
Is the toxicity mostly saline or something else?
Yes, I mean, the saline content more in there is much higher than it would be in the Pacific or the Atlantic Oceans. It's that, and that's why there's just so little that can actually survive in there.
Yeah, how deep that lake is, in its deepest part?
It is, actually, it's a pretty shallow lake. But still to this day, this is about twice the size of Lake Tahoe. So, and Lake Tahoe is the second largest lake in California. Now, also not too far from Salton Sea is the Anza Borrego Desert State Park. And by then, the way we're going is we're going to go past the Salton Sea, and then by Anza Borrego, then you start climbing the mountains on the east side. And then we're going to drop down into the west side of the mountains, which is, the population of San Diego County and such. Riverside and areas like that are on the other side. So we went by this area, and then Anza Borrego, and that happens to be California's largest state park. They have, let's see here, over 600,000 acres of dirt roads in 12 wilderness areas. And of course, when you go into the mountains there, you're crossing the Pacific Crest Trail that starts in Mexico and goes all the way up to Canada. Basically, from this part of the Crest Trail, it's about 2,650 miles to Canada from there. So from there, we're basically, we spent some time. I have an uncle that lives in Escondido, California, so we got to kind of, hang out there for a few days. But then from there, we have a niece and her husband that live in Santa Barbara area. And this happens to be along the coast of Santa Barbara. And that's right, honey, I forgot. So, and we were fortunate enough, our niece is friends with somebody in town, and they converted their garage into like a casita. And we got to basically rent it for $50 a night, which in Santa Barbara, no way, guys. It just doesn't happen anymore. Yeah, George.
It screams Photoshop to me.
No,
But
it's not.
how big are those rocks? Give me a perspective.
Yeah, that's probably about your size.
Oh, that's all.
Yeah, it's
It looks like.
no, I'm talking the top
Right,
part.
right.
Yeah, just the top part would be about your size.
Still.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's natural.
No. I was getting there. So some artist basically is playing with the coastal landscape. But the thing about it is they know that will be there just for a very short time. And if you look closely, you can see some landmass in the background. Those are the Channel Islands, by the way. And which you can see when it's not too foggy off the coast of Santa Barbara. And you can charter boats that will take you out there and such from there.
So who's responsible for that? Do you know the name of the artist?
I don't know the artist who did that, sorry, because I just basically, I'm walking on the beach, enjoying it. And then there that was, I thought that was pretty interesting. So, but again, I mean, that won't be there the next time I go there probably because of the tides that come and go. So after we visit with family, recharge our batteries, then we're starting to head north towards, go ahead, honey, go ahead. Sorry. So, this is a song called Pacific Coast Highway by the artist Mills. So, how appropriate is we're going to go take Highway 1 all the way up to San Francisco. So, anyways, on the way up, we go first down to 101, and we go to San Luis Obispo. And then we go down towards Morro Bay, and then up to San Simeon. And on the coast of San Simeon, you see all the seals and walruses that are kind of sunning themselves there, taking advantage. And I mean, it's just amazing how many, at first when you look at it, you think they're just rocks there. But then you realize that's just all the seals that are out there. It really is incredible. Kind of get back into, wildlife and such. Unfortunately, right now, plankton, it's very toxic. And a lot of these animals are becoming quite ill, so they've been doing a concerted effort to kind of save them. And that's from all the way down as far south as south of Santa Barbara, all the way up north of Morro Bay towards Monterey. So here are some of the the views off Coast Highway 1. This is there's an area that's north of Morro Bay and San Simeon, and it's called Ragged Point. And we became familiar with it because our niece and her husband that reside in Santa Barbara, they actually got married at Ragged Point. And so we stopped by there and took a couple photographs. This is looking south. This one's looking north along the coast. Now, when we were there for the wedding, you couldn't get much further north than Ragged Point because of the landslide. So if you wanted to go north, you'd have to go back to Paso Robles and then take the 101 to go up towards Monterey. But luckily, they had just cleared it, so we got to continue. And then here is just right before we hit Monterey. You can see it was a little foggy, but Highway 1 on the California coast, it's just a beautiful drive. It's just a wonderful way to kind of hot rod around California. I'm so sorry. I forgot. So this is Erkhe and the animals, Monterey, and I'm supposed to have
Some of them gave us play. Others kept miles away. Yes, they did.
Okay. And of course, San Francisco's known for different types of tripping out instead of road trips, especially during that era of Eric Burden. So, anyways, the first shot was when we were crossing the Golden Gate. Donna got that picture. This is we're on the other side, the north side of the Golden Gate, looking back towards the city. And, actually it was a fairly clear day for the Bay Area because it could be quite, the fog really rolls in there, even in the summer months. So this trip, unlike the other trip, we started in November when we did the south rim of the Grand Canyon. This trip, we started in August. And then kind of working our way up towards the Oregon coast. So, of course, when you get to Northern California, you're going to go through the redwoods, and it's something I just love to drive through the redwoods. So Donna's going to...
You ready?
No, okay. I'm sorry, it's my fault. Sorry.
You picked this music.
I know.
I wanted to do it.
Go ahead.
The suspense is wonderful.
Going back to Eric Burden. Okay, thank you. Eric Burden, prior to the song, there's an intro that he speaks it. It's just wonderful. I mean, he just loved this area so much, the Bay Area, when he was with the animals. So anyways, after we crossed the bridge, and then we're making our way north. Initially, we're on the 101, but then we're going to cut now back to the coast because we're going to be spending the night outside of Fort. I'm drawing a blank.
Bragg.
Yeah, thank you. Fort Bragg, and we just spent one night there because our goal is to make our way to Port Orford, Oregon, along the coast. So here's some of the wonderful redwood trees. I mean, what's fun when you kind of get, up in this area, there's a lot of kitschy things for the redwoods. Like there's one redwood you could actually drive through if you're so inclined, if you want to paying $20 to do so. And then there's a large statue of Paul Bunyan and Babe the ox, of course, that, only a guy like Paul Bunyan could chop these trees down, right? So, anyways. So, making our way back to the coast, went through Eureka, and then we're in Oregon now, and we're actually north of, I believe it was Gold City, or Gold Beach, thank you. And making our way towards Port Orford, but man, that coast in Oregon, northern Oregon, southern Oregon is just so beautiful. And it's just, look how many people are there. There's just a couple of people. And it's just a wonderful way of kind of experiencing the scenery there. And you can see, this isn't like what the weather is year-round in Oregon, trust me. It rains there quite a bit, but we were pretty fortunate with our days. So now we've come up further north, and this is from the hotel that we stayed at. It's called Castaway by the Sea. And outside our room, this is the view we had there. It was just, it was fantastic. And anyways, let's see. There's the little more of a close-up. This area is known for their cedar trees, and then they're harvested, and it's a very fine quality cedar that's really utilized. Here's another shot. And the reason why, this is when you look to the north from where we're staying, and I'm focusing on this because the next morning we are going to meet up. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the night that we stayed at our place, and we had a visitor there outside there, kind of checking us out. And the irony is, here we are in Port Orford, Oregon, and we run into some guy from Ozona, Texas. And then on top of that, there was another gentleman from Louisiana. He was actually there. His daughter was getting married in Portland, and he wanted to drive down and see the redwoods. So he spent the night there at the same place that we did. So the next morning, we wake up and we come across Cheryl Francis and John Tuck. That's the reason why we stayed there. They recommended the Castaway to us. And they told us we needed to get up early because the tide was out. And it was a great opportunity then to kind of go out and just kind of do some exploring on the beach.
When you say you came across them, you weren't.
No, they knew that they knew that we were there. They're the ones that told us that we should stay at the Castaway.
Is that near where they live now?
Yes. Yeah, this is right. And Cheryl loves it there. As you all know, she works at the public library there, and she's doing her art. And John is okay with it there, too. And of course, for Cheryl, she's much closer to her daughter, too, who lives in Oregon. But
So is that color blue true to life, or is it really that blue?
it's very blue there. It's just phenomenal. And then, you get to go to these outcroppings, which earlier, that night when we came in, there's no way you would have been walking out there. Let me find out the name. Remind me of the name of that. By the way, Port Orford is the oldest town on the Oregon coast. And it's the most westerly town in the contiguous United States. As you go up north, it starts going a little bit more east, and of course, Seattle, you have the Puget Sound and all that as well. But then, look at the sea life. You get to walk up to it, sea anemones, sea slugs, starfish. It's just incredible. Just to walk out there, and you'd think that things couldn't survive, but they do until the tide comes back. And we're just walking in the sand, and they're just everywhere, That's a sea slug. And then a little bit more.
Chitin.
I'm sorry?
Chitin.
Oh, chitin? Okay. So, thank you.
Cryptochitin.
I tried to do my research, but just the same. And then now we're looking more directly in front of where we're staying. And the reason why this is important, you see the guy going out. By the way, you can see when you start, I'm an old photographer. I mean, I used to work film. That's all I shot. And now that I'm using a cell phone, I'm not as familiar with it. And the phone I have, it's a Google Pixel, and it's supposed to have good resolution for photographs. But when you blow something up or enlarge it in the camera, it starts pixelating like this. So some of these images are going to be like that. But anyways, just to the north of where this guy is going out in his boat, then they have basically this unique dolly dock, and it's one of only two in the United States. And basically, because of the shallowness of the bay and it's unprotected, the only way that you could have a boat there is if it's basically lifted up every time. I mean, you're done with it. So the fishermen that go out, every morning they repeat this. They are basically, their boats parked on the dock, and did you tell me these used to be old bus chassis?
Yeah, school bus.
School bus chassis that they replaced them on. This crane right here is a 50-ton crane. It lift 50 tons, the other one's 30 ton. And typically, the larger boats, when they come in, the 50-ton will lift the boat, and then the catch will be lifted from the 30-ton in these containers. And then they'll bring them onto the dock, and then they, of course, ice up the fish right away. So, a few varieties of cod, Dungeness crab, salmon are predominantly. And this, in order to use this as your site where you fish from, you have to do practices that are like line caught now. I mean, you're not doing casting nets anymore and stuff like they used to, because they used to have commercial fishing there, and it's kind of a little bit more mom and pop, but that's still a big part of their industry there. Let's see. And then you can just see basically this boat's come back in. When we were there, even though it looked nice where we were, evidently out in the ocean it was so rough, not too many fishermen were going on at that time. So there weren't that many boats coming in. But they're just lifting this thing up with that crane, and I mean, it just takes minutes. Oops.
And then it sits in a cradle or something?
Yeah, it sits in a cradle, or they have these on the boat, on this, to support stronger structure of the boat, they'll have these places where the cable can connect to, and that the crane is then attached to, and then it just pulls it right up out of the.
Because the water's too rough to stay in the water?
Yeah, there's no way that if it was a marina there, as rough as that water is, the boats would be thrashed. And Jim was telling me, Jim used to live up in Oregon, and he'd been down to Port Orford, that he talked about some people going down. Don and I went right down on there to watch them lift the boats up. But these people that went there, a rogue wave came, knocked them into the water and took their lives. So it's that dangerous. And Jim also talked about.
They were up top where the boat.
Yeah, up on the top there. And by the way, right where you see that platform, there would be this boathouse there, and they stored a bunch of kayaks in it. And they had to shoot, and these guys would come there, and they'd just push their kayaks down the chute, and then they'd take them down into the bay and the water and paddle around. But I don't know about that.
Of all the times that we went there when we lived in Oregon, it was never that. The waves were wild. And Lee and I watched one of those fishing boats as it was going out. They were watching the waves coming in, and they were timing it so that they could try to hit the interval between the waves. And this guy missed it and just about flipped the boat. I mean, he went up the wave like this, and we really thought he was going to come back. And of course, he's loaded with craft pots. That's very common compared to what the
And the operator of the crane, when we were on top of the dock there, he told us that he gets there about 4 a.m, so the boats can all go out. And I could not believe. I think I don't know. Maybe I'm mistaken about this, but it seemed to me he said that they pay $350 a year to utilize this, which to me is so cheap. I can't believe how inexpensive that is. But
And they can utilize it as many times as they can go
Yeah.
in and out.
in and out,
If they
and
want to
then
go
of
in
course,
and out several times a day, they can.
right. And they have people that also will take tourists out on boats, and there'll be these little skipjacks, and they'll have the big crane lowering down in the water. The people will walk down that gangway there, and the little boat will come there and pick them up, and off they go. Kind of go touring along the coast. So now we visited, of course, some museums, and this happens to be Cheryl Francis Museum of Tiny Things. And I don't know if anybody recognizes this from the library, but this used to be the old card catalog from the Alpine Public Library. And Cheryl has utilized this in such a way that each of the drawers has a different installation in it. So, anyways, this one happens to be on Liberty. And this is in her home, by the way, where she and John live.
It's not in the library.
It's not in the library, but it really couldn't be because you couldn't trust, I think, people to, frankly. Yeah, these things would come up missing. Another drawer. Show. And then Jurassic Park. So these are just a few of the many drawers that you saw there, but very creative, very well done. I tried to get the curator at Shinati to kind of take this on, but I haven't heard anything. So, of course, Shinati's about large-scale art. This is just the opposite, but still site-specific. So.
I think Cheryl used to work in this library. They lived in the woman who does it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured, sure, I was here, and I thought that's probably good.
So this is just looking at the other side of where we stayed. They had, let's see there.
That was a hike we did, huh?
Yeah, no, that's the hike, and also there was a Coast Guard area there. And of course, since so much of the work there is based on the ocean, up from that dock that you saw there also was a memorial area there as well for the sailors that got lost at sea, because these guys go out fishing, and fishing is my understanding, it's a very dangerous way to make a living. So this is still looking kind of north. And then our next morning there, we get up and we're saying goodbye to Cheryl. There she is on her Port Orford Library bookmobile. Overlooking the bay there. And then this is the Port Orford Library that Cheryl works at. And it's quite comfortable. It was actually closed the day we were leaving. This is just one example. One of the things that was so nice about the library, they had a lot of art from the local artists hanging in there too. I thought that was kind of a nice touch. But I'm just showing you a few of the things. Here's a Dolly Parton display. So Cheryl, it does seem very happy and content there, I have to say. So from there, we went north because now we're headed towards Crater Lake. So we're going to leave the coast and we're going to go north and then east. But on the way, before we hit the road going east towards Crater Lake, we stopped at a town called Bandon, Oregon. And I'll tell you, what a lovely town. I mean, it was such a charming little town. And Port Orford is kind of, it's not gentrified. This town is a lot more gentrified, I have to say. And there's, of course, a lot of very expensive homes there for people. I think they summer there, during the summer months. leave the city. And by the way, I just wanted to say that Don and I were going to do this trip a year earlier, but we got shut down because of all the fires in Oregon and on the coast. So we postponed it, and the folks in Port Orford, they let us change our dates to come to next year, which worked out because not only were there fires, but it was so hot in the cities like Portland, people were escaping to the coast to kind of, get away from the heat. So Port Orford was just a wonderful place for them to go. But this is Bandon. I mean, this is now on their coast right there. And this is unique. A lot of the artists, they've collected debris, found objects that basically came in from the ocean onto the shore and collected them and started making objects. Now, we got to see a few of the larger ones that were outside. Unfortunately, the museum itself, the day that we were going up there on Monday, it was closed on Monday, so we didn't get to see everything, just some things in the window. But if you look closely, you could see from the old cones on the side of the road they're using, and reflector parts, very, very creative. And then this one here, this puffin, his name is Cosmo, it's the same thing. It's all found plastic things that washed ashore on the Oregon coast and collected, and then turned into art. And this is right around that area, right at the water that you saw just prior to that.
Harry Weekly in Oregon. Harry Weekly in
Yes. Yeah. But I think, I've been very creative. You can see even the bottom of the sandal. I think very, very cool. So, said goodbye to Brandon and drove east and made our way to Crater Lake. And Crater Lake is a place I had a chance to visit actually with my father and my younger brother. We had a trip there, and it just blew me away. I mean, just the beauty of the place. And Donna had been to the south rim of the Grand Canyon. She had never been to Crater Lake, so I definitely wanted her to have an opportunity to see Crater Lake. And we got to stay at the Crater Lake Lodge. There again, I mean, something that typically takes a long time if you're lucky to get accommodations. Yes, sir.
We went to Crater Lake probably 25 years ago or more.
Mm-hmm.
Kathy called every morning
1 year.
for a year to get us reservations and never got them.
So Donna gets an email from Xanterra, who runs this. I mean, this is now part of the national parks. And prior to this, though, this was put up and it was privately owned. And of course, they used Oregon spruce and such to do the building. And because the weather there, I mean, it was just a week or two ago, the campgrounds at Crater Lake were closed because it was so cold. And when I went with my father and my younger brother, it was July, and there was probably still about 5 or 6 foot of snow on the sides of the road up there. We're talking about 7,000 foot elevation. What's kind of crazy about this, though, is, of course, the Crater Lake was formed from a large volcanic eruption about 7,000 years ago. That's the entrance. Now, everything wasn't perfect when we were there. They were putting a new roof when we were there. So the day you wanted to be touring, you didn't want to be hearing the young guys up there. They had the shingles on the roof. But this is the entrance from the parking lot. And then here you can see, after you checked in, there's an area there going towards the restaurant. And you can see there's chairs out there that are overlooking Crater Lake itself. And Donna and I availed ourselves to those chairs many times over the three days we were there. In fact, Donna got to celebrate her 16th, her birthday on the 16th of August there. But that's the view, I mean, from the lodge.
Her 16th birthday? Her 16th birthday?
No, on the 16th.
Yes. Her sweet 16th.
Yes.
Yeah.
She'll always be sweet 16th.
Oh.
So that's Wizard Island. And typically there is an opportunity. They have a boat that will go. And by the way, this lake is one of the deepest lakes in North America. It's almost 2,000 feet deep. this dormant cylindrical volcano is just filled up over the years with rain and melted snow. I mean, pretty incredible.
So what's the temperature of the water?
The water,
Cold.
it is cold. But, you know, this time around, I've never before actually we hiked down. Well, you'll see that in a little bit. But anyways, this was one morning, the first morning we were there, woke up, I just put the camera to the window overlooking the lake. You could see, this is when we're getting there were some fires south, and you're starting to see a little of the smoke that was in the air. But for the most part of the reason why the lake is so blue, because you get that beautiful clear sky just, you know, reflected into the water. Now, it's about 34 miles around, and when Donna and I were there were a few different bicycle groups that were doing rides around the crater itself. And there is absolutely no shoulder there, guys. I mean, you know, you just really have to really believe in all the other automobiles that are going around. They're not going to be looking at something and take you out, but really, frankly, they have to keep their eyes on the road because it'd be very easy to kind of drive off the side of some of these areas there. I mean, just look how blue some of that water is there. It's just incredible. And that's looking down. I just love looking at the colors down into the lake itself from the lodge. And then we're driving around the 33 miles now, circumnavigating.
I have a bicycle trip scheduled in 2020 to go around Crater Lake.
You gotta go, Albert. You'd love
No,
it.
he doesn't want it. You just said there's no shoulder.
There is no shoulder, but
There aren't even any rails
No, there's nothing.
on the side of the road.
There's a two-lane road.
so the National Park Service actually took over the Crater Lake Lodge in 1967. And it was renovated in 1994, and they put about $15 million into that renovation. And the reason being is when they initially built this, it was very difficult because of the weather over the years. And they had to go back in and redo a lot of different things to kind of make it to where, you know, it was going to be maintained as the lodge. Of course, Theodore Roosevelt was the one who made Crater Lake the 6th national park, and that was back in 1902. Let me see here, there was something else. At the time, when the lake was, or when the volcano erupted, that was 7,700 years ago. And at the time, the mount was called Mount Mazama. And it collapsed. And Mount Mazama at the time was the largest mountain in Oregon. Now it's Mount Hood. It was over 12,000 feet. So just kind of give you an idea of just how much imploded. And just the moss on the trees too. It just kind of blew me away. I don't remember. And that is another little island that you see on the east side of the caldera. And there's waterfalls that are feeding into the lake as well from the higher elevation. And just more different angles from going around the caldera. And then Donna and I, we decided to do the hike down. Unfortunately, at the time, they were entertaining re-upping the boat rides, but when we were there, they weren't there yet. So the boats were, you could still hike down there. There were people fishing down there, actually. And I did stick my foot in the water, but you can see there are some of the parks people, they're getting ready, testing the boats out, getting ready for the people. One of the good things about this boat ride, though, the only way you're going to do it is if you're going to hike down and caldera and hike back up. I mean, not everybody wants to do that. That's about 1,000-foot climb going back up.
So those had been closed since
Yeah.
the beginning of COVID.
Yeah, it was closed as a result of COVID.
So they were getting them, they're preparing them to open them later that week. that
Yeah.
We were there for the first time.
And another picture of Woodford Island,
Resume, I should say.
and other mountains in the vicinity. And there's the marker there, it's over 7,000 feet, and that's just adjacent to the lodge itself. And the lodge is on the south side of the caldera. Now, they have other accommodations further away from the caldera. And we had a front come in here as well, just like we did the Grand Canyon. It was kind of sitting on the deck here.
So if you're bicycling around, does the bike route go different?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the terrain it's very undulating. You're climbing, going on, dropping thousands of feet as well. Yeah, no, you're getting a good workout. Yeah. So you can see the machinery there that was lifting up the tiles. They're redoing the roof there. And here's our last picture, saying goodbye. And then from here, we're going to Mount Hood. And that's the Timberline Lodge. And that lodge was built in 1937. FDR was doing the Conservation Corps programs and, trying to create work. The lodge itself is at 6,000 feet elevation. And it's 55,000 square foot space. It's quite large. Typically, they get about 2 million visitors a year. What's kind of interesting about Mount Hood, though, I mean, there's times I've heard often that people will go at the lodge and they'll either hike or go skiing. This was a ski lodge. And as a matter of fact, the ski runs there used to be open year-round. And the week we were there in August, and it was towards the end of August, that was the last week they were going to close it up. And it was just kind of funny in the summer to see snowboarders and skiers kind of walking around and not much snow. But the lodge itself and the interior, everything you see there were done by the craftsmen that actually worked on the lodge. I mean, they did the carvings of the bears and did the metal work here, both the railing and the fir trees, more carvings. And etchings. And of course, more wildlife scene, more metal work. I mean, throughout the whole lodge. It really is wonderful. And then what they do too is this also, and by the way, Crater Lake was as well as is Mount Hood, Timberline Lodge. It's right next to the trail that goes up from Mexico to Canada. And when we were in Crater Lake, we met a gentleman that started in Mexico. And then we saw him in Crater Lake, and he was headed to the north. And of course, was quite pleased that he was almost done with it. He was from England. And the room, yes.
So you said it used to be a ski lodge, but is it not anymore?
Well, it is. It is a matter of fact, in the back, they have kind of like the hospital rooms there. So they have a series of beds that you can just rent if you want to spend the night there, and then you get public showers and stuff like that. Now the floors, of course, this is an older lodge. The floors are creaky. Your neighbors are going to their room and leaving their room. But we there again. I mean, something that the first time Don and I went there, I mean, there's no way we could have gotten a room there. And this time we were able to get a room and change the date and everything, and we, had a nice view of of Mount Hood, looking to the west. There's Paul Bunyan and Dave the ox.
Still had limited restaurant service and things, though.
I'm sorry?
Still had limited
Yeah,
restaurant.
very limited, yes.
Certain areas
things
still
were
closed.
still impacted by COVID, but you know what? Not so much so. Actually, when we pulled up to the Timberline Lodge, outside of it, they had like a guard up there, and they were making sure if you're going to go up there that you were staying in the lodge to park in the parking lot. So they had enough people that were starting to kind of start life up again, right? And then here is they're grooming the runs, and there were snowboarders. I saw some young guys with their snowboards, get ready to go. And then down in you can see the lifts that are going up.
Back in the day, they used to train Olympians here.
Yes, they did.
Stayed open
Yeah.
so long as the winter.
Yeah. No, it was open year round. And part of the reason they redid the building, it was so important for them to redo it because of the history of the skiing there. Yeah, the government funded the construction initially of this building. It was the WPA and the CCC, they paid for it all. And as a matter of fact, when it opened in 1937, Franklin Roosevelt and Eleanor Roosevelt came for the opening itself. So, this was a real badge of honor for him. There's the sign for the Pacific Crest Trail. You can see Canada was only 550 miles away. And when Don and I hiked some of it, we saw some people, but nobody that was actually doing the whole thing. That was just people.
No, it's just a foot trail. There's no vehicular traffic.
Oh, no, that's just a foot trail. Yeah. But they have bear boxes throughout. I mean, you walk and there are bear boxes for you to put your stuff, because otherwise, of course, you're. Another view from the launch. And again, I mean, sometimes, it's skiers, even though on a clear day you would have been able to see the lodge, sometimes it's a whiteout. They can't find their way back. And they've had people hiking and their front comes in and they, frankly, they succumb to the elements. It changes that quickly. So this is looking out to the east, from behind the lodge itself. So from there, we're headed out to the Hood River area, because we're going to make our way, hopefully, to Boise. And Hood River is such a wonderful little town, and it just happened by the time we got there, it was lunchtime. And we're thinking, where do we find something to eat, right? Well, there was a food truck, and we saw this line of people just waiting for that food truck. So we thought, hey, why not? Let's get in line. I have to tell you, the best fish tacos I ever had. And it was like $5 the fish taco. I couldn't believe it. I mean, the fish was caught right from the river there, fresh. It was just wonderful. But you can see now, the year before, they had such high temperatures in the summer that the Hood River Library was open for a cooling shelter.
Because the temperature got all the way up to 80, huh?
No. That was actually almost triple digits there. Yeah. So from there, we did do a night in Boise. For the most part, the whole way we sailed along, but when we got right before we entered Idaho from Oregon, and which, by the way, the town of Pendleton is along the road. And for those of you who have ever been up to Chinati, you've seen the Robert Irwin, and he has the Calmer basalt ponds. Those were harvested outside of Pendleton, Oregon, and then shipped down to Marfa for the installation for his Untitled Dawn to Dusk. So we spent a night. And it was hard, so hard to find accommodations in Boise. I'm thinking, what's going on in Boise? Well, Boise State was having their first football game. It was so hard to find accommodations, and everything was packed. But we got in, but we were really late because as we were coming, there was a semi-truck on one of the passes that caught fire, and they shut the road down. Luckily for us, though, where we were positioned when the traffic stopped, there was a rest stop there. So we got to pull off there in the rest stop, and Don and I played cards for a while. Let it clear, then we took off for Boise, spent the night in Boise, and then after leaving Boise, we made our way to Jackson, Wyoming, the Grand Tetons. It's a place Don and I have come to love. We've done a couple summers that We actually lived in a campground with an RV for 4-month periods, working with the Grand Teton Association. And we still, of course, have some friends that are working there. So we took it as an opportunity, since we're, almost there, right? To, make our way to the Grand Tetons. And I mean, if you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't been there, do yourself a favor and please go someday, because it is such a beautiful place to experience. I mean, the Tetons are just wonderful. What's kind of interesting, I've mentioned how the Grand Canyon, some of the rocks were 1.8 billion years old. Some of the rocks here, we're talking 2.7 billion years old. It's just incredible. 310,000 acres. This was established as a national park in 1929. The tallest peak is the Grand Teton, and that's at 13,775 feet. There's an organization there called the Jenny Lake Rangers, and they're basically the people that go out and look for people who get in trouble when they do their hiking and stuff. They don't come back. They send them out and try to rescue the people that do the climbs. These are some of the lakes that are fed by the snow melt. This is called Spring Lake. And it's an area that is used a lot for recreation, paddle boarders and kayaks. Oh, some of the wildlife there. Beautiful fox. And of course, a lot of bison there. This is an area called Mormon Row. That other picture was close to the campground that we used to stay in, called Ravant. And it was wonderful, especially when you first got there, because you could hear the Ravant River just running, because of the snow melt. It's just such a nice sound to hear, And it's just so beautiful. And then looking across the Snake River towards the Tetons. And there's a moose. And a few moose pictures here. And by the way, when we were there, at the time we had our dog Hudson, and we had to be very careful. Because for a moose, Hudson's, something they're going to kill. And, I'd be walking them every morning, and somebody was saying, there's a moose up there, and you just turn around. You didn't want to take a chance. Donna was in our campsite. We had an employee campsite when we were working there. She was walking Hudson, and then there were a bunch of moose coming in, and I just drove the car around to pick her up. So
They're pretty aggressive towards people, right?
they not so much towards people. They left the people alone. But it depends if they're in their rut season and stuff. Then they're going to be a little bit more territorial. Here are the elk. This isn't in the elk refuge. This is actually in Teton National Park. It's looking east from the Tetons. In this picture I tried to blow up, it's kind of a little fuzzy, but you see the velvet on their antlers. And if you ever go into the town of Jackson, in their little town square, they have these arches made out of the elk antlers. It's pretty cool. And this is Meaner's Ferry. He's one of the characters that settled there. And you see the cable going across. He actually had a ferry to transport people back and forth there. Now, the side that I am from taking the picture, there's a great eatery called Dornan's. And it's been with the family for years. And if you ever go to the Tetons, go to Dornan's. They have an upper deck, and it just has a wonderful view of the Tetons. And, the food's, they have a great wine store there.
So where is that, John?
That is the last one.
Mm-hmm.
That is basically when you come up from Jackson Hole and you're headed north, and then you're going to pass the Grovon campground where we live, and that's to the east, and go a little further north will be the Jackson Hole Airport, and then you go a little further north, and then you head west, and that is basically...
It's a moose.
Yeah, it's in Moose, Wyoming, and that's where the headquarters is for the national park, and that's where the headquarters was for the Grand Teton Association. So let me see. And then from here, we went to our accommodations. Of course, we always stayed in RVs when we were there working, but we were able, there again, to get a room at the Signal Mountain Lodge. And this is the view from the deck of the Signal Mountain Lodge. Now, we had a cabin that wasn't in this building, but this was the building that you would go to get your coffee, and you had to wear your mask and such. But we got there, and of course, the sun was setting. We went to the local, which is a great restaurant in Jackson, met some people we used to work with, had a great meal, and then made our way to the lodge to watch the sunset to the west. It's just really beautiful area. And Signal Mountain is a great place to ride your bike because you get fine, really good elevation. Here's the next morning. Basically the same photographs. And then we started doing some exploring, looking at the Tetons from different parts of the park itself. And then here is you look at Mount Moran. Mount Moran is kind of interesting. You can't quite see it, but there's still a glacier on the east side of that. And I'm really afraid that one day that's going to come tumbling down, unfortunately. But you know what? They get over 500 inches of snow a year. It's just, the winters are, Don and I have always talked about going there in the winter and visit the elk refuge, because that's when the elk all kind of go there and they feed on them and such. Well, there it is right there. Except the glacier that are still in the mountains. And then here's more pictures of String Lake with the other lake was Jenny Lake. Jenny Lake is where you could actually take a boat to the other side and do some hikes up towards the Grand and some of the other mountains. This is String Lake, and it's much more shallow, it's much smaller, and you can see that people use it to paddleboard and kayak. Let me just kind of go through these. This is the infamous spot, although the trees are much higher, where Ansel Adams did that wonderful black and white photograph looking at the Snake River with the Tetons in the background. It's just iconic. Now, this is an area that where Don and I, we went years ago, before we worked for the Teton Association, we stopped at the Tetons first and, just to experience it. And then we went to an area called Coulter Bay, and it's just beautiful. It's in the northern part of the Grand Tetons. And you can see that these dots there, it's all dried out. I mean, unfortunately, the water level is much lower than it has been. It has dried up. And I'm talking, there were a series of some pretty big boats that were in those slips there. Well, this next photo is from when we were there in 2016. Just to give you an idea, you could see, the water was there. But then, if you look in the background, you can hardly see the mountain. And that's because we had the fires that were in the area that were actually in Colorado and Wyoming itself. And I love the Tetons, but when it's smoky like that, I just assume not be there. It's just, And I felt, in a way, I just would feel so bad for the people who came out, and that was their window of opportunity, and that's how they got to see it. There again, this is 2 weeks before that last photograph, with the smoke shrouding the mountains, and just how nice and clear and pristine it was. And there are a lot of black bear in there. There's a famous bear called 399. It's a grizzly, and she's had many, many cubs over the years, and has been prolific being a mother there, which is a good thing to kind of get the population. And there's a photographer in town. He's made a living just finding her and photographing her. And he has some wonderful images of 399. And some of her cubs have subsequently grown up, and they're also siring cubs down over time. But then, with the influx of people, I mean, these parks are visited more. Now, it did cut back during during COVID time, the private net, every year there'd be more and more and more people. And even though the speed limit are 45 miles an hour, people go too fast, and they, unfortunately, they've killed some of the victims, hitting their automobile. Just more shots of it. And, some of our older photographs, it's just interesting to see the Tetons are so much more covered with snow than they are now. And this is again at the end of August. This is just about when their fall is gonna set in, and you're gonna start really getting the brilliant colors from the aspens and such. There's a little, what's this called again? The big, yeah. No, it's not a chipmunk. It's they're called pica. Yeah,
No, that's a chipmunk.
that's a chipmunk? Okay, I stand corrected.
You got struck.
And this is one of my favorite museums. It's the National Museum of Wildlife Art, and it's just north of Jackson, and built into the mountain. And I'll tell you, it's a wonderful place, and most of the art is wildlife art. And the different painters, or they invite different artists to come out, and they'll have the plein air artists come out, and they'll be painting scenes throughout the area. When we were there, it just so happens that Herb Albert had some works. This is the outside of the museum, and this is called Brotherhood, some works that he did back in 2004, and they're made out of bronze. One of the galleries in town also represented Herb Albert, the musician. And he had his this time. The first time we went out there in 2016, Al Weiwei, he had a series of astrological signs on those pedestals there that were pretty cool.
Is this Herb Albert, the trumpeter?
The trumpeter.
He's a sculptor.
Yeah, he's a sculptor. He's an artist, that's for sure. Here's the last one. A few more pictures of Grand. And this is, we're headed into Moose. You cross the street over the Snake. So you're looking at some of the other Tetons. And now we're into the park, and a little further away, looking at the Tetons a little further north. And then this is our last morning there when we headed out from here. We went over Togany Pass, which is actually a little north of here, and then dropped down to Interstate 80, and then made our way to Fort Collins, Colorado, where we spent the night. But the last thing, one of the great centers at the Tetons, the Rockefellers were big benefactors. They bought a lot of land there, and then they donated it in subsequent years. And this is the JSR Center. And it's a wonderful building. It wasn't done by Frank Lloyd Wright, but if you saw the design, you could see it was influenced by Lloyd Wright. And this is one of the quotes they had on there, and I thought that was just a nice way of ending the presentation. So anyway, so that's it, guys.
Thank you.
We set you free.